At some point, the plan stopped being the plan. Not with a dramatic announcement. Not with a clear before and after. Just a quiet, gradual realization that the life you are living is not the one you designed. The relationship you thought was permanent, gone. The career that was supposed to build into something, stalled. The health, the certainty, the version of the future you have been counting on. Replaced by something you never agreed to. And now you are here. Not where you planned. Not where you worked for. Here. The question is not how to get back to the plan. The plan is gone. The question, the one Stoicism asks with uncomfortable directness, is this: what are you going to build with what actually is? The Stoics had a concept they returned to constantly. Amor fati, love of fate. Not as a passive resignation to whatever happens. Not as spiritual bypassing dressed in ancient language. But as an active, deliberate choice to stop spending energy fighting the reality of what already is, and redirect that energy toward what can still be made from it. Epictetus said it simply: seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish. Wish the things which happen to be as they are. That line has been misread for centuries as advice to want less. It is actually advice to stop dividing your life into the version you wanted and the version you got, because that division is where most human suffering lies. Not in the difficulty itself. In the refusal to accept that the difficulty is now the starting point. There is a specific kind of paralysis that comes from living between two versions of your life. The one that was supposed to happen, and the one that did. A man in that state is not fully in either place. He is not building in the present, because the present still feels temporary, still feels like a waiting room for the real version to resume. And he is not at peace with the past, because the past ended in a way that still feels like a mistake, like something that should be corrected. So he waits. Months, sometimes years. Waiting for the version he planned to somehow reassert itself. Waiting for the path to reopen. Waiting to feel ready to accept what is already undeniably true. The Stoics called this the primary source of unnecessary suffering. Not the loss itself, the resistance to it. Because the loss happened regardless. The reality changed regardless. Every day spent in resistance is a day that could have been spent building, and was not. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is not motivational rhetoric. It is a precise description of what happens when a man stops fighting the obstacle and starts working with it. The obstacle stops being the interruption of the life. It becomes the material the life is made from. There is a version of acceptance that looks like giving up. Lowering expectations, settling, deciding the original dream was naive and that this diminished version is what was always coming. That is not Stoic acceptance. That is bitterness wearing a philosophical mask. Real acceptance, the kind the Stoics practiced and taught, is not a shrinking. It is a reorientation. It means, I am done spending my energy on the argument with reality. I am done negotiating with what has already happened. Not because it does not matter, it does. Not because the loss was not real, it was. But because the negotiation costs everything and changes nothing. And once that energy is reclaimed, something shifts. The man who was waiting for his old life to return starts, quietly, to look at what is actually in front of him. What is still possible here? What can still be built from this specific starting point, this exact set of circumstances, these actual resources? not the resources he planned to have. The ones he actually has. That question, asked genuinely, without self-pity and without false optimism, almost always reveals more than the man expected. Because the circumstances that felt like a permanent reduction are often, when examined honestly, a different kind of space. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. Unfamiliar, but workable. So what does it look like to actually begin? Not to make peace with everything at once. Not to perform gratitude you do not feel. Just to begin. The first move is the simplest and the hardest. Stop treating the present as temporary. As long as the current version of your life feels like a placeholder, you will not invest in it fully. You will keep one foot outside the door, waiting to leave. And the life you are half committed to will never show you what it could actually become. So make the decision, deliberately and consciously, to treat this version of your life as the real one. Not forever, not as a final sentence, but as the starting point of genuine investment. The second move is to identify what you can still control here. Not what you could control in the version that did not happen. Here, in this, now. Your discipline, your character, your daily choices, the quality of your attention. The relationships you choose to build or deepen. The work you show up for fully, even when the circumstances are not what you designed. Those things are still entirely yours. The third move is to look for what this version of your life is making possible that the original plan would not have. This is not toxic positivity. It is honest inquiry. Sometimes a door closes and a man can genuinely see, if he looks without bitterness, that behind it was a version of himself he would not have wanted to remain. Not always, but often enough to ask the question. What is this making possible? What is this forcing me to develop that I would not have developed otherwise? Who am I becoming because of this, not in spite of it? Those questions do not erase the loss. But they begin to make something from it. And a man who is making something, even from materials he never chose, is no longer surviving his life. He is living it. Nobody chooses all of it. Not the emperor, not the philosopher, not the man who appears to have everything arranged exactly as planned. At some point, every life contains a version it did not ask for. The Stoics did not promise you the life you designed. They offered something more durable, the tools to build something real from whatever life you are actually standing in. That is not a consolation prize. It is, when you understand it fully, the more interesting challenge. Because the life you planned was built on what you already knew. The life you did not plan is built on what you are still becoming. Stop waiting for the version that was supposed to happen. This version is yours. Build it like you mean it. Walk the path. Remain steady.